Two homeless twin sisters were rummaging through trash cans, looking for food when they came across a baby trapped inside a car under the scorching sun. Without hesitation, they shattered the window and ran all the way to the hospital, but upon arrival, the nurse collapsed in tears when she discovered that the blazing sun was relentless on the pavement as two small shadows slipped through the narrow alley. Emily and Olivia, 6-year-old twins, moved in perfect sync, their watchful eyes scanning every corner for hidden treasures that the rest of the world would deem garbage. "Over there, Liv," Emily whispered, pointing to an overflowing dumpster behind a busy restaurant. The smell of food made both of their stomachs rumble in unison. Olivia, the bolder of the two, went first. With cat-like agility, she climbed up the side of the dumpster, her tiny fingers gripping the rusty edges. Emily stood guard, her big, expressive eyes sweeping the street for any sign of danger. "Jackpot!" Olivia quietly exclaimed, pulling out a plastic bag filled with day-old bread. The smile on her grimy face revealed a gap where a baby tooth had recently fallen out. The girls hid behind a foul-smelling dumpster to divide their bounty. As they chewed on the slightly moldy bread, their gazes locked, a silent conversation passing between them. Survive one more day. Together. A distant scream made Emily shrink back, her eyes wide with fear. Olivia instinctively wrapped an arm around her sister, whispering words of comfort. "Shh, it's okay, Em. It's not him. He won't find us here." The flashback came without warning, as it always did. The smell of cheap alcohol, the sound of breaking glass, the screams, their father's heavy hand rising. Emily shook her head, pushing away the memories. "Mum would protect us if she was here," she murmured, more to herself than to Olivia. Olivia nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Yes, but now it's just us two. We take care of each other, remember?" The twins stood up, brushing crumbs off their tattered clothes. Once upon a time, these clothes had been pretty, birthday gifts from a loving mother. Now they were faded and patched, silent witnesses to their journey on the streets. The heat was oppressive as they ventured further into the city. Tall buildings cast intermittent shadows, offering brief moments of relief from the merciless sun. Hurrying people rushed past them without a second glance, absorbed in their own worlds. The twins were invisible, urban ghosts adrift in a sea of indifference. "Look over there, Em." Olivia pointed to a park not too far away. A fountain gushed crystal-clear water, the sight making their dry throats ache with longing. Emily hesitated. "But what if someone calls the police? Remember the last time?" Olivia squeezed her sister's hand. "We'll be quick, just a drink, I promise." The two ran, their bare feet slapping against the hot pavement. They reached the fountain, panting, glancing around nervously before dipping their hands into the cool water. As they drank, Emily noticed a man in a suit hurrying by, talking on his cell phone. He seemed agitated, gesturing frantically as he argued with someone on the other end. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Emily saw something in his gaze, worry, maybe guilt. But before she could think more about it, he disappeared into the crowd. "Em, come on." Olivia tugged her hand, bringing her back to reality. "There's a cop coming this way." The twins quickly moved away from the fountain, blending into the park crowd. They zigzagged around families picnicking and office workers on lunch break, their hearts pounding with adrenaline from the close call. Eventually, they reached a quieter area of the park, where old trees offered generous shade. Exhausted, they collapsed onto the cool grass, gasping for breath. "That was close," Olivia laughed, relief evident in her voice. Emily nodded, but her mind was still on the man in the suit. Something about him intrigued her, giving her a sense that something important was about to happen. "Liv," she began hesitantly, "do you think we'll ever have a normal life like these people in the park?" Olivia was silent for a moment, her eyes scanning the happy families around them. "One day, Em," she finally replied, her voice carrying a determination beyond her years. "One day we'll have all of this, I promise." The twins lay there, letting the filtered sunlight through the leaves warm their faces. For a fleeting moment, they could pretend they were just two ordinary kids enjoying a summer day in the park. But reality soon intruded. Emily's stomach growled, reminding them that the moldy bread from earlier wasn't enough. "Let's go," Olivia said, standing up and extending a hand to her sister. "I know a place near here where they sometimes throw out good food." Emily took Olivia's hand, allowing her sister to pull her up. Together they left the park, returning to the city's sweltering streets. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of dark alleys, rummaged dumpsters, and wary glances from passers-by. The twins moved like shadows through the city, their senses sharpened by months on the streets. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Emily and Olivia knew it was time to find a safe place to spend the night. Over there, Olivia pointed to a hidden alley between two abandoned buildings. Looks quiet. The girls tucked themselves into a corner, using old cardboard as an improvised mattress. Emily curled up against Olivia, seeking warmth and comfort. "Liv?" Emily whispered in the growing darkness. "Yes, Em? Do you think someday someone will love us again, like Mom did?" Olivia hugged her sister tighter. "Of course they will, Em. One day we'll find people who love us. Until then, we have each other, and that's what matters most." Olivia's words were like a balm to Emily's heart. She closed her eyes, letting exhaustion take over. As the last light of day disappeared, the twins fell asleep in each other's arms, unaware that the next day would bring a twist of fate that would forever change their lives. Destiny was guiding them toward an encounter that would test their courage, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between them. Night fell over the city, wrapping Emily and Olivia in its dark cloak. Two little souls against the world, united by love and the hope of a better tomorrow. The sun was already high in the sky when Emily and Olivia woke in their makeshift hiding spot. The heat from the previous day had not relented, and the pavement was already starting to ripple under the scorching sun. "I'm hungry, Liv," Emily mumbled, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Olivia stretched, her muscles protesting after a night on the hard ground. "I know, Em. Let's see what we can find today." The twins left the alley, squinting against the bright sunlight. The city was already bustling with activity, the streets full of people hurrying to work, oblivious to the two small figures moving in the shadows. They wandered the streets for hours, rummaging through dumpsters and begging for scraps at restaurants. The day was particularly tough, with little discarded food and even less kindness from strangers. Exhausted and starving, the girls arrived at a nearly empty parking lot. The heat was oppressive, causing the air to shimmer above the asphalt. "Look, Liv," Emily pointed to a lone car parked under the relentless sun. "Maybe there's something to eat inside." Olivia hesitated, always the more cautious of the two. "I'm not sure, Em. It could be dangerous." But before they could decide, a faint sound reached their ears, a muffled cry. Soft but unmistakable. "Did you hear that?" Emily asked, her eyes wide. Olivia nodded, her expression a mixture of fear and resolve. "It sounds like a baby." The crying came again, louder this time. Without hesitating, the twins ran toward the car. As they got closer, the horror of the situation became clear. Through the fogged-up windows, they could see a baby strapped into a car seat, his face red from crying. "Oh my God, Liv, we have to do something!" Emily exclaimed, desperately pulling on the locked car door handle. Olivia looked around frantically for help, but the parking lot was deserted. "That baby will die if we don't do something," she said, her voice trembling. Emily was already searching for something to break the window. Her eyes landed on a rock lying nearby. "Here, Liv, use this." Olivia picked up the rock, hesitating for a moment. Breaking someone's car window was exactly the kind of thing that could get them in trouble, but the baby's weak cries made her decide. With all the strength she could muster, Olivia struck the glass once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th try, the window shattered. The car alarm blared, echoing through the empty lot. The twins exchanged panicked looks. "Hurry, Em, get the baby!" Olivia shouted, keeping watch. Emily squeezed through the broken window, ignoring the shards of glass cutting her arms. Carefully, she unfastened the baby from the car seat. It was a boy, only a few months old, his skin hot to the touch and his lips dry. "He's not doing well, Liv," Emily said, tears streaking her grimy face as she handed the baby to her sister. Olivia took the baby into her arms, her heart breaking at the child's condition. "We have to get him to a hospital, Em, now!" The twins ran, their bare feet pounding the hot asphalt. The baby in Olivia's arms had gone alarmingly quiet, his eyes half closed. They raced through crowded streets, ignoring the shocked looks from pedestrians. Some people shouted, others tried to stop them, but the girls didn't dare pause. The baby's life depended on them. After what felt like an eternity, they spotted the hospital. With one last burst of energy, the twins burst through the emergency doors, panting and exhausted. "Please," Olivia gasped, presenting the baby to a stunned nurse. "He needs help." The nurse, a middle-aged woman named Sarah, quickly took the baby. Her eyes widened at the child's condition. "What happened?" she asked, already yelling for a doctor. Emily, through sobs, quickly explained about the car in the parking lot. Sarah listened, her face growing paler with every word. Suddenly, Sarah froze, looking more closely at the baby in her arms. A strangled sound escaped her throat. "Oh my God," she whispered, tears beginning to roll down her cheeks. "It's Noah, he's my nephew." The twins exchanged confused, frightened looks. Realizing their shock, Sarah knelt to their level. "You saved his life," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "You're real heroes." At that moment, a medical team arrived and quickly wheeled baby Noah away for treatment. Sarah stood up, wiping her tears. "Come with me," she said gently to the twins. "You need to tell me exactly what happened." Emily and Olivia followed Sarah to a private room, where she had them sit in soft chairs, a luxury they hadn't experienced in months. "First, you need something to eat and drink," Sarah said, noticing how hungry they looked. She quickly brought them water and sandwiches, which the twins devoured eagerly. As they ate, Sarah watched them, her heart breaking for the obvious homelessness of the girls. She asked gentle questions about where they lived, about their parents. The evasive answers from the twins only confirmed her suspicions. "You were very brave today," Sarah said softly. "You saved Noah's life. He's my sister Jessica's son." The twins listened, still trying to process everything that had happened. "Can you tell me exactly where you found the car?" Sarah asked, taking out a notepad. Emily and Olivia described the location as best they could. Sarah wrote everything down, concern and confusion etched on her face. "I don't understand how this could happen," she murmured, more to herself than to the girls. "Jessica would never do something like this." At that moment, the door opened and a police officer walked in. The twins immediately shrank back, fear evident in their eyes. "It's okay," Sarah quickly reassured them. "He's here to help, not to hurt you." The officer, a kindly man named Officer Thompson, knelt beside the girls. "Hello," he said softly. "You did something very brave today. Can you tell me what you saw?" With kindness and patience, Officer Thompson listened to the twins' account. He asked careful questions, always keeping his voice calm and reassuring. "You're real heroes," he said when they finished. "Because of you, that little baby is going to be okay." The girls smiled shyly, not used to praise. "Now," Officer Thompson continued, exchanging a look with Sarah, "we need to understand how you ended up in this situation. Where are your parents?" The twins' smiles disappeared instantly. Olivia squeezed Emily's hand, both visibly tense. "It's all right," Sarah interjected, noting the girls' discomfort. "No one is going to force you to talk about something you don't want to. But we want to help you, just like you helped Noah." There was a moment of tense silence. Then, to Olivia's surprise, Emily began to speak. "Our mom died a year ago," she said quietly, "and our dad, he drinks a lot. We ran away." Olivia wrapped a protective arm around her sister, silent tears sliding down her own cheeks. Sarah and Officer Thompson exchanged concerned looks. The situation was more complicated than they had initially thought. "You were very brave to tell us that," Officer Thompson said gently. "We'll do everything we can to help you, okay?" The twins nodded hesitantly, still wary but feeling a tiny spark of hope. Just then another doctor entered the room. "The baby is stable," he announced. "He arrived just in time, a few more minutes in that car." Sarah let out a breath of relief. "Can I see him?" The doctor nodded. "Of course, the parents are on their way. They've been notified of the situation." Sarah turned to the twins. "Would you like to see Noah? I'm sure he'd like to meet his rescuers." Emily and Olivia exchanged looks, a mix of curiosity and apprehension on their faces. Finally, Olivia nodded. "Yes," she said softly, "we'd like to see him." As they followed Sarah down the hospital corridor, the twins could hardly believe the turn their lives had taken in just a few hours, from invisible on the streets to heroes in a hospital. Entering the room where Noah was, their eyes widened at the sight of the baby, now clean and resting peacefully. He was surrounded by tubes and machines, but his little face was no longer red and distressed. "Hi, Noah," Sarah whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "Look who's here to see you. These are the brave girls who saved you." Emily and Olivia timidly approached the incubator. Noah opened his eyes, looking straight at them. "Hey, Noah," Emily said softly. "We're happy you're all right." Olivia simply smiled, tears of relief in her eyes. At that moment, they heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. Sarah turned, tension evident on her face. "It's his parents," she explained to the twins. "Let's give them some privacy, okay?" As they left the room, Emily and Olivia saw a couple rush in, the woman sobbing at the sight of the baby. Back in the waiting area, Sarah knelt in front of the twins. "You did something incredible today," she said, holding the girls' hands. "You saved a life, and now, if you'll allow it, we'd like to help you too." Emily and Olivia looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Olivia spoke. "What's going to happen to us now?" Sarah smiled gently. "Well, first we'll take care of you, give you a warm bath, clean clothes, and a good meal. Then we'll work together to find a safe place for you to stay. I won't lie, it might be a complicated process, but I promise I'll be there with you every step of the way." The twins slowly nodded, a mixture of fear and hope in their eyes. "What about our dad?" Emily asked quietly. Sarah exchanged a glance with Officer Thompson before answering carefully. "We'll handle that when the time comes," she said. "For now, the most important thing is that you're safe and well cared for." As Sarah guided them out of the room, toward an uncertain but promising future, Emily and Olivia held hands tightly. They didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while, they felt they were no longer alone. The day that had started like any other in their harsh life on the streets had turned into something extraordinary. They had saved a life, and in doing so, perhaps saved themselves too. As they walked down the hospital corridor, the twins knew their journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, hard questions to answer, and tough decisions to make. But for now, they allowed themselves to feel something they hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The sun was still blazing outside, but for Emily and Olivia, it felt like a new light had entered their lives. A light of possibilities, second chances, and maybe even a home they could call their own. The hospital corridor was silent, except for the muffled sound of raised voices coming from a private room. Inside, Michael and Jessica, Noah's parents, were in the midst of a heated argument, their voices oscillating between furious whispers and suppressed yells. "How could you, Michael?" Jessica sobbed, her face streaked with tears and smudged makeup. "How could you just forget our baby in the car?" Michael, a tired-looking man in his mid-30s, ran his hands through his disheveled hair, his loose tie and rumpled shirt, silent witnesses to the day's chaos. "I don't know, Jess," he replied, his voice cracking. "I swear I don't know how it happened. I would never do that on purpose." Jessica pulled away from him, hugging herself as though to protect from further hurt. "But you did, Michael. You left our baby in that car, under the blistering sun, while you went to work, like he didn't matter at all." Her words hit Michael like a punch to the gut. He sank into a nearby chair, the weight of his actions finally settling over him. "I got a phone call," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was Mr. Thompson. He wanted the reports I was supposed to deliver yesterday. I was late, stressed, and when I got to the office—" "You completely forgot you had left your son in the car," Jessica finished, her voice cold. Michael nodded miserably. "I don't know how I could be so negligent, irresponsible, cruel," Jessica offered, each word heavy with pain and anger. "Yes," Michael agreed, tears finally escaping. "All of that and more. Jess, I'm so sorry, more than I can express." Jessica looked at him, a battle of emotions raging in her face. Part of her wanted to comfort him, to see the remorse in his eyes, but another part, the part that could still hear the beeping of the machines monitoring their son, couldn't forgive him. "Sorry isn't enough, Michael," she said, her voice trembling. "Noah could have died, our baby could have died because you cared more about reports than your own family." Michael flinched at her words, knowing they were true. "I know," he murmured. "I know I failed as a father, as a husband. I let work consume everything." Jessica walked to the window, staring at the hospital parking lot without really seeing anything. "It's not just today, Michael. For months you've been distant, always at work, always consumed by some project or deadline. She turned to face him, years of pent-up frustration finally surfacing. You missed Noah's first smile, did you know that? And his first steps. You weren't even there when he said Dada for the first time. Michael felt every word like a knife to the heart. He knew he had neglected his family, but hearing Jessica list all the precious moments he had missed was almost unbearable. I thought I was doing the right thing, he said quietly, working hard to give you a better life, to secure Noah's future. Jessica shook her head, fresh tears rolling down her face. We didn't need more money or a bigger house, Michael. We needed you, present, involved, a father and a husband, not a stranger we barely see. Heavy silence filled the room, years of poor communication and skewed priorities creating a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. Finally, Michael stood, approaching Jessica hesitantly. What can I do? He asked, his voice breaking. How can I fix this? Jessica stared at him, her eyes searching his face. I'm not sure you can, Michael. I don't know if there's a way back from this. Her words hung in the air, laden with finality. Michael felt as though the ground had vanished beneath his feet. Are you saying you want... He couldn't finish the sentence, fear choking his words. Jessica closed her eyes, tears slipping silently. I don't know what I want, Michael. I just know I can't go on like this. Noah deserves better. I deserve better. Just then, a soft knock on the door interrupted the tense conversation. Sarah, the nurse, entered hesitantly. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said gently, but I thought you'd like to know that Noah is awake and asking for his parents. Jessica immediately straightened, wiping away her tears. Thank you, Sarah, we're coming. As Sarah left, Jessica turned to Michael one last time. Let's go see our son, but this conversation isn't over. Michael nodded silently, following Jessica out of the room. As they walked down the corridor toward Noah's room, he couldn't help but notice the physical and emotional distance between them, a chasm he had created and now seemed impossible to cross. Entering Noah's room, the baby's face lit up when he saw his parents. Jessica rushed to his side, taking his tiny hand between hers. Hi, my love, she whispered, kissing Noah's forehead. Mommy's here, you're safe now. Michael stood at the door, heartbroken. He wanted to go closer, to hold his son, to beg forgiveness, but he felt he had lost that right. It was Noah who ended the standoff. His little eyes found Michael and he stretched out his arms, babbling, "Dada, dada." The sound almost made Michael collapse. With hesitant steps, he approached the bed, careful not to touch Jessica. Hey, buddy, he said softly, touching Noah's cheek. Daddy's so sorry, so sorry. Jessica watched, her heart torn between the anger she felt toward her husband and the love she saw in her son's eyes for his father. The doctor said he's going to be fine, she said, breaking the silence. No permanent damage, thank God, and thanks to those two girls. Michael nodded, swallowing hard. Where are they? I'd like to thank them. Sarah is looking after them, Jessica answered. Apparently they're street kids. Can you imagine that? Two little girls all alone in the world saved our son when you... She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Michael's face displayed all the guilt needed. Jess, he began, his voice shaking. I know words aren't enough, but I promise I'll change. I'll be the father and husband you both deserve. Jessica looked at him, years of broken promises and disappointment reflected in her expression. Don't make promises you can't keep, Michael. Not again. Before Michael could respond, Sarah entered the room again. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are some people here who'd like to talk to you about the incident. Jessica and Michael exchanged apprehensive looks. The reality of the consequences of their actions was about to come knocking. We're coming, Jessica said, giving Noah one last kiss. As they followed Sarah out of the room, Michael tried to take Jessica's hand. She hesitated for a moment before allowing it, but the tension in her fingers said the road to forgiveness and reconciliation would be long and difficult. The couple left, leaving behind Noah's soft breathing, a reminder of the miracle they had nearly lost in the long journey ahead to rebuild their fractured family. Sarah watched through the window of the nurse's lounge, her eyes fixed on the two small figures sitting in the hospital garden. Emily and Olivia, the twins who had saved her nephew, looked so fragile and lost in the mid-afternoon light. Sarah's heart ached at the thought of what these children must have endured. With a heavy sigh, she turned to the phone on the table. She needed to call Jessica, her sister, and tell her about the unlikely heroes who had saved Noah. but how to explain that two homeless children did what responsible adults should have done. Before she could pick up the phone, the door opened and David, the social worker, stepped in. His face was serious, eyes tired behind thin-framed glasses. "How are they?" Sarah asked, indicating the twins with a nod. David sighed, running a hand through his grey hair. Scared, wary, it's not easy getting them to talk. Sarah nodded in understanding. "What have you found out so far?" "Not much," David admitted. "We know they've been on the streets for a few months. The mother died about a year ago. The father, well, he seems to be the reason they ran." Sarah felt a knot in her stomach. "Abuse?" David winced. "Probably alcoholism, definitely, but they're very protective of each other. They won't say much about it." Outside, Emily and Olivia sat on a bench, their feet swinging without reaching the ground. Olivia kept an arm protectively around Emily's shoulders, her eyes vigilant, watching every movement around them. "Liv," Emily whispered, "do you think they'll send us back to him?" Olivia tightened her hug. "I won't let that happen, Em, I promise." Olivia's words triggered a wave of memories in Emily. She closed her eyes, and suddenly she was back on that fateful night, almost a year ago. There's one flashback. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the small house. Emily cowered in bed, pulling the blanket up to her chin. Beside her, Olivia was already up, eyes wide with fear. "Where are you, you worthless witch?" Their father's drunken voice thundered through the house. "Please, John, the girls are sleeping." Their mother's pleading voice reached the twins' ears. Another crash, followed by a muffled scream. Emily began to cry silently, and Olivia clutched her tightly. "Shush," Olivia whispered. "It'll be okay, Em. Mom will take care of us." But that night, Mom didn't come. The screaming continued, growing weaker and weaker until a terrifying silence fell over the house. The next morning, the twins found their mother at the bottom of the stairs, motionless. Their father was passed out on the couch, an empty bottle still in his hand. It was Olivia who made the decision. With tears in her eyes, she took Emily's hand. "Come on, Em, we have to leave here." And so, with only the clothes on their backs and a few belongings hastily stuffed into a backpack, the twins left behind the only home they had ever known. And a flashback. Emily opened her eyes, tears silently rolling down her cheeks. Olivia, noticing her sister's state, held her tighter. "It's okay, Em," she murmured. "We're safe now." Back in the nurse's lounge, Sarah finally summoned the courage to make the call. After a few rings, Jessica's exhausted voice answered. "Jess," Sarah began hesitantly, "how's Noah?" "He's fine, thank God," Jessica replied. "And thanks to those girls, Sarah, who are they? Where did they come from?" Sarah closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. "It's a long story, Jess, but they have no one. They've been living on the streets." There was silence on the other end. When Jessica spoke again, her voice trembled with emotion. "My God, Sarah, homeless children saved my son when we—" "Don't blame yourself, Jess," Sarah interrupted gently. "What matters is Noah is okay, and now maybe we can help these girls too." Meanwhile, David approached the twins out in the garden. He sat on the bench next to them, keeping a respectful distance. "Hello, girls," he said kindly. "My name is David. I'm here to help you." Olivia eyed him warily. "We don't need help. We're fine on our own." David gave a sad smile. "You're very brave, you know that? What you did today, saving that baby, was incredible." Emily looked at him, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Is he going to be okay?" "Yes, thanks to you," David assured them. "You're true heroes." The words seemed to reach something in Emily. Tears began to slide down her face. We didn't want him to get hurt, like—" She trailed off, but Olivia finished for her, her voice barely a whisper. "Like our mom." David felt his heart constrict. Carefully, he leaned a little closer. "Can you tell me about her, about what happened?" There was a long silence. Olivia looked to Emily, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Our mom," Olivia began, her voice trembling. "She tried to protect us from our dad. He drank a lot, got violent." Emily sniffled. "One night, he hurt her really bad. The next morning, she didn't wake up." David closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the children's pain. When he opened them, Sarah was approaching, tears in her eyes. "Girls," Sarah said softly, kneeling in front of them, "you've been so brave, not just today, but every day since you lost your mum. I want you to know you're not alone anymore. We're going to take care of you, I promise." Olivia looked at Sarah. years of distrust battling against the hope blossoming in her heart. How can we trust you? Sarah smiled gently. One day at a time, I'll show you that you can trust me. How about we start with a warm bath, clean clothes, and a decent meal? The twins looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice small but hopeful. Can we stay together? Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. Always, I promise I'll do everything I can to keep you two together and safe. As Sarah led the twins back into the hospital, David remained behind, watching. He knew the road ahead would be difficult. There would be investigations, court hearings, tough decisions to be made. But looking at those two brave girls, he felt a renewed determination. No matter what happened, he would do everything in his power to make sure Emily and Olivia finally found the home and security they deserved. Michael paced back and forth in his office, his phone pressed against his ear, beads of sweat trickling down his forehead. On the other end of the line, his boss, Mr. Thompson, demanded explanations for his sudden absence and the overdue reports. Sir, I'm so sorry, Michael stammered, his mind racing to come up with a plausible excuse. There was a family emergency. My son, he had to be rushed to the hospital. So it wasn't exactly a lie, but omitting the real reason made his stomach churn. My goodness, Michael, Mr. Thompson's voice softened a bit. Is he all right? Michael closed his eyes, guilt eating at him. Yes, sir, he'll be fine. It was just a scare. Well, family comes first, of course, Mr. Thompson said, but we need those reports, Michael. The meeting with the investors is tomorrow. I know, sir. I'll work on them as soon as I can. I promise they'll be ready in time. As soon as he hung up, Michael sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands. How had it come to this? Lying to cover up a mistake that had almost cost his son's life. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Jessica walked down the corridor toward Noah's room, her mind swirling with thoughts. Something about Michael's story didn't add up. How could he have simply forgotten the baby in the car? And why did he seem so evasive when she questioned the details? Turning the corner, she nearly collided with Sarah, who was carrying a stack of patient charts. Oh, sorry, Jess, Sarah exclaimed, trying to keep the files from toppling over. I was a bit distracted. Jessica forced a smile. It's okay. How are those girls, the ones who saved Noah? Sarah's face lit up. They're amazing, Jess. So brave and resilient after all they've been through. Jessica nodded, but something in Sarah's tone made her pause. Sarah, is there something you're not telling me? Sarah hesitated, biting her lip. She had promised herself to be honest with Jessica, but how could she tell her that her own husband had been the one responsible for endangering Noah? Jess, Sarah began cautiously, there's something you need to know about what happened with Noah. Something Michael might not have fully told you. Jessica's heart pounded. What do you mean? Sarah took a deep breath. The girls found Noah locked in the car in the parking lot near Michael's office. He seems to have left the baby there when he went to work. Jessica felt as if the floor had vanished beneath her feet. What? No way. Michael told me it was just a brief lapse, that he came right back. Sarah placed a comforting hand on her sister's shoulder. I'm sorry, Jess, I know it's hard to believe, but the evidence is clear. Noah was in that car for hours. Jessica stumbled, leaning against the wall for support. Tears began rolling down her face as the reality sank in. Michael had lied. He had put his job above his son's safety and then tried to cover it up. I need a moment, Jessica murmured, hurrying toward the nearest restroom. Sarah watched her go, her heart heavy. She knew she had done the right thing by telling the truth, but seeing the pain in Jessica's eyes was almost unbearable. Elsewhere in the hospital, Emily and Olivia sat in a small exam room, dressed in hospital gowns that seemed to swallow them whole. A kind nurse had just finished checking them over, murmuring about malnutrition and possible health concerns. Once alone, Olivia turned to Emily, worry evident in her eyes. She whispered, what if they find out about Dad? What if they send us back? Emily shuddered at the thought of her father. We can't go back, Liv, we can't. Olivia nodded, a fierce resolve lighting her eyes. Then we need to run now before it's too late. The twins exchanged a look of understanding. They had survived on the streets for months. Surely they could escape a hospital. Cautiously, Olivia peeked into the hallway. It was relatively empty, with just a few nurses busy at a distant station. Let's go, she whispered. taking Emily's hand. The girls crept down the corridor, their bare feet barely making a sound on the cold floor. They passed patient rooms and exam rooms, hearts pounding with each step. Finally, they spotted an emergency exit. Olivia pushed the door, triggering a shrill alarm. "Run!" she shouted, pulling Emily along. The twins raced down the spiral staircase, the sound of alarmed voices and hurried footsteps echoing behind them. They reached the ground floor and burst into the daylight, fresh air filling their lungs. But before they could get more than a few steps toward freedom, they felt gentle but firm hands catching them. "Easy, girls," came Sarah's soft voice. "It's okay, you're safe here." Olivia struggled, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. "No, you're going to send us back. We can't go back to him." Sarah knelt down, still holding their hands gently. "Look at me, Emily, Olivia. I promised I'd take care of you, remember? That I wouldn't let anything bad happen to you? I keep my promises." Emily, tears streaming down her face, looked into Sarah's eyes. "Promise? Promise we won't have to go back to Dad?" Sarah felt her heart break at the fear in the girl's eyes. "I promise," she said firmly. "You'll never have to go back to him. We'll find a safe place for you, together." Slowly, the tension left the girls' bodies. Olivia, always the protector, took a step forward. "Can we trust you?" she asked, her voice small but determined. Sarah smiled gently. "Yes, you can. And I'll prove it to you every day if I have to. Now how about we go back inside? It's getting chilly out here." The twins exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Olivia nodded. "Okay," she said quietly, "let's go back." As Sarah guided them back into the hospital, she couldn't help but think of Jessica and the difficult conversation her sister was about to have with Michael. The repercussions of that day's events were only beginning to unfold. In the hospital parking lot, Jessica sat in her car, her hands shaking as she held her phone. She had just left a message for Michael. "We need to talk. I know the truth about what happened with Noah." The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the lot. Jessica looked up at the hospital, thinking of her son, of the brave twins who saved him, and of the uncertain future now stretching before her. One thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The lies had been exposed, and now it was time to face the consequences. The silence in the hospital room was oppressive, broken only by the steady beeping of the monitors connected to Noah. Jessica sat beside his bed, her eyes red and puffy, fixed on her sleeping son. Michael stood near the window, his reflection pale and tense in the glass. The door opened softly and Sarah stepped in, concern etched on her face. "Jess," she said quietly, "can we talk?" Jessica nodded silently, casting a cold glance at Michael before following her sister out of the room. Michael hesitated for a moment, then followed. In the empty corridor, Sarah took a deep breath, preparing for the storm about to break. "Jess, Michael," she began, "there's something you need to know about what really happened today." Jessica folded her arms, her stance defensive. "What do you mean, Sarah? What else is there besides the fact that my husband neglected our son?" Michael winced at her words but remained silent. Sarah looked straight at Jessica. "The twins who saved Noah. They found him locked in the car in Michael's office parking lot. He had been there for hours." Jessica's face turned pale, her hands beginning to tremble. "Hours?" she whispered, turning to Michael. "You told me it was just a brief lapse." Michael took a step forward, his hands outstretched in supplication. "Jess, I didn't know how to tell you. I never meant for this to happen." "You didn't know how to tell me," Jessica exploded, her voice echoing down the corridor. "You left our son, our baby, locked in a car for hours, Michael. He could have died." Sarah placed a comforting hand on Jessica's shoulder, but her sister shrugged it off, focusing all her fury on Michael. "How could you?" Jessica asked, tears of rage and pain streaming down her face. "What was so important at work that made you forget your own child?" Michael ran his hands through his hair, messing it up further. "I got an urgent call from Mr. Thompson the moment I reached the parking lot. The reports for the investor meeting. I was so focused, so stressed, I just forgot." The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica stared at Michael, as though seeing him for the first time, horror and disbelief etched on her features. "You chose reports over our child's life," she finally said, her voice low and trembling. Michael took a step toward her, tears in his eyes. "Jess, please, I know I made a terrible mistake. I'm devastated. The pressure at work has been crushing, but that's no excuse. I failed as a father, as a husband. Enough, Jessica shouted, raising her hands. I don't want to hear any more, not right now. Just then, a commotion at the end of the corridor drew their attention. Emily and Olivia were being gently escorted back into the hospital by a security guard, both shivering in oversized hospital gowns. Sarah hurried to them, kneeling to their eye level. What happened? Why did you try to run? Olivia, ever the protector, stepped forward. We don't want to go back to him, she said, her voice small but determined. You can't make us go back to Dad. Sarah's heart clenched at the fear in the girl's voice. Oh, sweethearts, she said gently. Nobody's going to force you to go back. I promised to take care of you, remember? Emily, tears silently sliding down her face, looked at Sarah with pleading eyes. But what if he finds us? What if he comes after us? Jessica, who had followed them with Michael, felt her heart break at the girl's words. She knelt down beside Sarah, speaking softly. You're safe here, I promise. No one is going to hurt you. Michael, watching the scene, felt a new wave of shame and guilt wash over him. Here were two children who had so little, who had gone through so much, yet they'd risked everything to save his son, the son he had so grievously neglected. "Hi, girls," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "What you did today, saving Noah, was the bravest thing I've ever seen. I'm forever grateful to you." Olivia looked at Michael with a mix of distrust and curiosity. "You're the baby's father?" Michael nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, that's me." "Why did you leave him in the car?" Emily asked innocently, her big eyes full of confusion. The question hit Michael like a punch to the gut. He knelt down to their level, tears in his eyes. "I made a terrible mistake," he said softly. "A mistake that should never have happened. I let work consume me so much that I forgot what truly matters." Jessica observed the interaction, her anger still simmering beneath the surface. But seeing her husband confronted with the innocence and courage of these two girls made her pause. Sensing the tension, Sarah intervened. "How about we go back to your room, girls? You must be hungry. We can order something nice for you to eat." The twins nodded hesitantly, still casting wary glances at Michael and Jessica. As Sarah led the girls back to their room, Jessica turned to Michael, her voice low and controlled. "We need to talk about all of this, about us, about the future." Michael nodded. Knowing what came next could determine the fate of their marriage and their family. "I know," he said simply. "I'm ready to face the consequences of my actions." Jessica glanced one last time at Noah's room, then down the corridor where the twins had vanished with Sarah. "It's not just about us anymore," she said quietly. "We have to think about what's best for Noah, and maybe for those girls too." Michael followed her gaze, a spark of understanding in his eyes. "You're thinking about—" Jessica cut him off with a gesture. "I'm not thinking anything definitive yet, but those girls saved our child. They need help, a home, and we have a lot to figure out before we can even consider something like that." With one final look loaded with conflicted emotions, Jessica walked away, leaving Michael alone in the hallway. He stood there, contemplating the weight of his actions and the possible repercussions that stretched far beyond that fateful day. The truth had come out, exposing deep wounds and opening doors to unexpected possibilities. What the future held for all of them remained unclear, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same. The hotel room was quiet, except for the muffled sound of Jessica's sobs. She sat on the edge of the bed, a half-packed suitcase beside her, while Sarah held her in a silent embrace. "I don't know what to do, Sarah," Jessica wept, her voice thick with grief. "How did we get here?" Sarah gently rubbed her sister's back, her own heart heavy with Jessica's pain. "You're doing the right thing, Jess. Sometimes we need space to think, to heal." Jessica nodded slowly, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I love Michael, Sarah, but what he did, I don't know if I can trust him again. Not with Noah." "I understand," Sarah said softly. "And I'm here for you no matter what. You and Noah can stay with me as long as you need." Jessica looked at her sister, gratitude shining in her tired eyes. "Thank you, Sarah. I don't know what I'd do without you." Meanwhile, in the social worker David's office, a darker story was unfolding. David flipped through a thick folder, his expression growing graver with each page. "My God," he murmured, running a hand through his grey hair. The file contained disturbing details about Emily and Olivia's father, John Carter, 42, a history of alcoholism and domestic violence. Multiple police calls to the Carter home over the years. The mother's death, officially recorded as an accident, now seemed even more suspicious. David picked up the phone, his fingers hovering over the numbers. He knew he had to move quickly to protect the twins, but he also understood the delicacy of the situation. Back at the hospital, Michael sat alone in the cafeteria, a cup of cold coffee untouched before him. His phone buzzed, displaying a message from Jessica. "I'm staying at Sarah's for a while. I need space. Please respect that." Michael felt a cold fist clench his heart. He knew he deserved this, that his actions had shattered Jessica's trust in a way that might never be repaired. But the reality of separation, even if temporary, was crushing. With trembling hands, he pulled a crumpled business card from his pocket. Dr. Elena Martinez, family and couples therapist. Jessica had suggested therapy months ago, when Michael's long work hours began taking a toll on their relationship. At the time, he dismissed the idea, too busy and too proud to admit he needed help. Now staring at the card, Michael felt a mix of shame and determination. He had failed his family in every way possible, but maybe it wasn't too late to start mending the damage. Letting out a long breath, he dialed the number. "Dr. Martinez's office, how may I help you?" a gentle voice answered. "Hi," Michael said, his voice hoarse. I need help." Back in the hotel room, Jessica lay on the bed looking at a photo of Noah on her phone. Sarah entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of tea. "How are you feeling?" Sarah asked, handing 1 cup to her sister. Jessica shrugged, a sad smile on her lips. "Like my world has flipped upside down, but also relieved in a way. Like I can finally breathe." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "It's normal to feel that way. You're making a hard but necessary choice." "Sarah," Jessica began hesitantly, "what will happen to those girls, Emily and Olivia?" Sarah sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "David is investigating their situation. It sounds like their father. Well, it's not safe for them to go back." Jessica felt her heart tighten. "They saved Noah. We can't just leave them in the system." A flicker of understanding crossed Sarah's face. "Jess, are you thinking about—" "I don't know," Jessica interrupted quickly. "It's crazy, I know, especially now with everything going on with Michael and me. But I can't stop thinking about them." Sarah took her sister's hand, squeezing gently. "It's not crazy to want to help, but you need to take care of yourself and Noah first. 1 step at a time, okay?" Jessica nodded, fresh tears shining in her eyes. "1 step at a time," she repeated softly. At the hospital, Emily and Olivia were in their hospital room, slowly getting used to this new environment. It was strange for them. The soft bed, the regular meals, the sense of safety. "Hello, girls," David said softly as he entered. "How are you feeling today?" Olivia looked at him distrustfully, moving closer to Emily. "We're fine," she answered cautiously. David took a seat in a nearby chair, keeping a respectful distance. "I wanted to talk to you about what happened with your mom." Emily froze, her crayon dropping from her hand. Olivia instantly wrapped her arms around her sister, glaring at David. "It's okay," David assured them quickly. "You're not in trouble. I just want to understand so I can help." A long silence followed. Then, surprising everyone, Emily spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was an accident. Dad said it was an accident." David nodded gently. "Sometimes bad things happen and it's nobody's fault, but sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt others. Can you tell me more about that night?" As the twins slowly began to share their painful story, in another part of the city, Michael sat in his car, parked outside Dr. Martinez's office. He stared at the building, turmoil of emotions swirling inside him. Fear, shame, regret, they all fought for dominance. But above all, there was a spark of hope. Hope that it wasn't too late to change, to be the father and husband his family deserved. With a deep breath, Michael got out of the car and headed for the entrance. It was time to face his demons and begin the long, difficult road to redemption. The waiting room at Dr. Martinez's office was quiet, save for the soft ticking of a clock on the wall. Michael fidgeted in his chair, his palms sweating as he waited for his first therapy session. When the door finally opened, he almost jumped. Dr. Martinez, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, greeted him with a warm smile. "Mr. Sullivan, please come in." Michael followed her into the office, feeling as though he was stepping into unknown territory. "So, Michael," Dr. Martinez began once they were both seated, "what brings you here today?" Michael took a deep breath, the words rushing out. "I almost killed my son. I forgot him in the car for hours. My marriage is falling apart. I need help." Dr. Martinez listened intently, no judgment in her eyes. "That must have been traumatic for everyone involved. We'll work together to understand how this happened and how we can make sure it never happens again." While Michael embarked on his journey of self-discovery and healing, Jessica was at Sarah's home, trying to piece together the fragments of her shattered life. "I got a text from Michael," Jessica said, glancing at her phone. "He started therapy today." Sarah, who was preparing dinner, looked over at her sister with a blend of concern and hope. "That's good, Jess. It's an important first step." Jessica nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I know I want him to get better, Sarah, for our family, but it still hurts so much." Sarah put the spoon down and pulled her sister into a hug. "I know, sweetie, it'll take time, but you're strong and you're not alone." The sisters remained like that for a moment, taking comfort in each other. Their relationship, sometimes strained in the past, was now strengthened in the face of adversity. "You know," Jessica said, pulling away gently, "with everything going on, I've been thinking a lot about Mom, what she'd say, how she'd advise us." Sarah gave a sad smile. "She'd probably tell us to be patient, to have faith in each other and in ourselves. And not to forget to eat," Jessica added with a watery laugh, recalling their mother's insistence on always keeping the family well fed, even in tough times. "Exactly," Sarah agreed, returning to the pot on the stove. "So let's honor her memory and eat, okay?" Back at the hospital, David was meeting with the medical and support team to discuss Emily and Olivia's future. "Sorry, their home situation is untenable," David explained gravely. "The father has a history of alcohol abuse and domestic violence. We can't, in good conscience, send the girls back to that environment." Dr. Chen, the pediatrician in charge, nodded. "I fully agree. The girls also show signs of malnutrition and prolonged neglect. They need a stable, loving environment to recover physically and emotionally." "What are our options?" asked one of the social workers. David sighed, running a hand through his gray hair. "We're trying to find relatives who might take them in. Failing that, we'll have to consider foster care, but given how close the twins are, it's crucial they stay together." Meanwhile, unaware that decisions about their lives were being made, Emily and Olivia rested in their hospital room, slowly adjusting to their new reality. The bed was soft, the meals were regular, and for once, they felt safe. "Liv," Emily whispered, lying beside her sister, "do you think we'll stay here forever?" Olivia hugged her sister tighter. "I don't know, Em, but I promise we'll stay together no matter what." At that moment, a nurse entered, carrying a tray with dinner. "Hello, girls, I brought something special for you tonight." The twins' eyes widened at the sight of the meal. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, colorful vegetables, and even a small dessert. "All this is for us?" Olivia asked incredulously. The nurse smiled kindly. "Of course, you need good food to get strong and healthy." As the girls ate, savoring every bite as if it were their last, the nurse watched with a mix of tenderness and sadness. It was clear they weren't used to so much attention and care. Back in Dr. Martinez's office, Michael was wrapping up his first session, emotionally drained but with a glimmer of hope. "Michael," Dr. Martinez said softly, "what happened was serious, but the fact that you're here seeking help shows that you want to change. It will be a long and sometimes difficult journey, but I'm here to support you." Michael nodded, wiping away a stubborn tear. "I want to be better. For Noah, for Jessica, for myself." "That's an excellent first step," the therapist smiled. "For our next session, I want you to keep a journal. Write down your thoughts, stress triggers, moments when you feel compelled to prioritize work over everything else. It'll help us identify patterns and develop coping strategies." Leaving the office, Michael pulled out his cell phone. His hands shook slightly as he typed a message to Jessica. "Had my first session today. I know I have a long road ahead, but I'm committed to changing, to being the father and husband you both deserve. I love you and Noah more than anything. I hope that, in time, we can rebuild what I broke." He hesitated a moment before hitting send. It was a small step, but an important one, the start of his redemption journey. Meanwhile, in the hospital room, Emily and Olivia had fallen asleep, arms wrapped around each other, their bellies full, and for the first time in a while, a sense of security enveloping them. The future remained uncertain, but in that moment, they had each other and a flicker of hope. The sound of children's laughter echoed down the hospital corridor, a rare but welcome noise in such a typically somber place. Jessica was sitting on the floor of Emily and Olivia's room, caught up in a spirited game of Uno with the twins. "I can't believe you have another plush 4, Jessica exclaimed in mock outrage as Olivia slapped down the card with a mischievous grin. Emily giggled, her eyes shining with a joy that seemed new to her. Liv always saves the best cards for last. Jessica watched the girls, feeling a wave of unexpected tenderness. In recent weeks, she found herself drawn more and more to the twins' room, seeking comfort in their innocence and resilience. "You two are so smart," Jessica smiled, shuffling the cards for a new round. "I think I need more practice if I want any chance against you." Meanwhile, across town, Michael was seated in front of Dr. Martinez, now a regular and crucial part of his weekly routine. "So, Michael," Dr. Martinez began, "how was your week?" Michael took a deep breath, a small smile forming on his lips. "Better. I spent more time with Noah. I turned off my work phone and just stayed present with him." Dr. Martinez nodded encouragingly. "That's wonderful, Michael. How did it feel?" "At first I was anxious," Michael admitted. "I kept thinking about unanswered emails, calls I might be missing, but then Noah smiled at me. Such a pure, loving smile. And I realized nothing at work could be more important than that moment." "That's significant progress," the therapist smiled. "You're starting to realign your priorities. How are things with Jessica?" Michael's smile faded slightly. "Still complicated, but she let me spend more time with Noah. It's a start." Back at the hospital, Sarah sat in her office staring at a pile of papers on her desk, adoption forms. She had spent the last few nights researching, considering, imagining. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. David, the social worker, entered with a serious expression. "Sarah, we have news about the twins' father," he said, settling into a chair. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "What did you find out?" David sighed heavily. "We located him, John Carter. He's not in good shape. Lost his job a few months ago, living off odd jobs. The drinking got worse after the girls ran away." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling a mix of pity and anger. "Does he know where the girls are?" "We gave him a general update," David explained. "That the girls are receiving medical care after an incident. He wants to see them." Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. "Absolutely not. Not until we're sure the girls are safe." David nodded in agreement. "I fully agree. Right now we're assessing whether he's a real threat. Depending on that, we may need legal measures to protect Emily and Olivia." Sarah glanced at the adoption forms on her desk, her resolve hardening. "David, what if I wanted to adopt them?" David's eyes widened in surprise. "Sarah, that's a huge decision. Are you sure?" "Not entirely," Sarah admitted. "But the more time I spend with them, the more I feel it's the right thing. They need stability, a loving home. I want to give that to them." David offered a gentle smile. "Your heart's in the right place, Sarah. But it won't be easy, especially with the birth father still in the picture. We'll have to carefully assess everything." Sarah nodded, determined. "I understand, and I'm prepared to fight for them if I have to." In the twins' room, the Uno game had ended, and Jessica was now reading a story as Emily and Olivia cuddled up beside her on the bed. "Can't the ugly duckling discovered that he was in fact a beautiful swan," Jessica read softly, noticing how the girls seemed to soak in every word. "Sometimes I feel like the ugly duckling," Emily murmured. Jessica felt her heart ache. "Oh, honey," she said, pulling Emily closer. "You two are brave, beautiful swans. Don't ever forget that." Olivia looked at Jessica, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. "Jessica, do you think we'll ever have a real family again?" The question caught Jessica off guard, choking her up with emotion. She looked at the two girls, feeling an unexpected love grow in her chest. "You already have a family," she said softly. "Maybe not in the traditional sense, but all of us here, me, Sarah, even Michael, care about you very much. And who knows what the future holds." The girls smiled, snuggling closer to Jessica. For a moment, the hospital room felt like something else, a sanctuary of hope and possibility. As the sun set outside, casting a golden glow through the window, Jessica found herself imagining a future she'd never considered before. A future where her family might grow in unexpected and wonderful ways. But as night fell, a shadow loomed, the shadow of the twins' father, whose presence threatened to disrupt the fragile peace they had found. The next chapter of their lives was about to begin, and nobody could predict the challenges that lay ahead. The day dawned grey and overcast, as though the sky itself sensed the coming storm. Sarah was on duty at the hospital checking files when the sound of a commotion at reception caught her attention. "I want to see my daughters," a rough, inebriated male voice echoed down the hallway. Sarah's blood ran cold. She rushed toward the noise only to find a chaotic scene. John Carter, Emily and Olivia's father, was staggering in the reception area, his face red and swollen, his eyes bloodshot with a mix of rage and desperation. "Sir, please calm down," a security guard tried to restrain him. "We can't allow you to see the children in this condition." "They're my daughters," John yelled, trying to break free. "You have no right to keep them from me." Sarah approached cautiously. "Mr. Carter," she said, keeping her voice firm. "I'm Nurse Sarah. I've been caring for Emily and Olivia. Can we talk in private?" John glared at her, his hazy eyes trying to focus. You're keeping my girls away from me?" "We're protecting them, Mr. Carter," Sarah replied, trying to stay calm. "Please come with me. We'll discuss their situation." Reluctantly, John followed Sarah into a private room, the stench of alcohol almost overpowering. Once the door closed, he slumped into a chair, all his earlier bravado gone. "I'm a terrible father, aren't I?" he muttered, more to himself than to Sarah. Sarah felt a pang of pity, quickly overshadowed by the memory of the fear in Emily and Olivia's eyes. "Mr. Carter, your daughters have been through a lot. They need stability and security right now." John looked up, tears mixed with the red haze of alcohol. "I love them, you know. Always have. I don't know how to be a good father. Not without her." Sarah realized he was talking about his deceased wife. "Grief is hard, Mr. Carter, but your daughters need you. Sober, present, able to care for them." Before John could respond, the door abruptly opened. Jessica walked in, eyes wide with surprise and concern. "Sarah, what's going on? I heard the twins' father was here and—" She stopped, noticing John. "Oh." Sarah quickly made the introductions, noticing how Jessica instinctively positioned herself between John and the door, as though to protect the twins who weren't even there. "Mrs. Sullivan," John said, his voice cracking. You've been seeing my girls." Jessica hesitated, sharing a look with Sarah. "Yes, Mr. Carter, they're wonderful girls." A sob escaped John. "Are they okay? Do they talk about me?" The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Jessica spoke, her voice firm but soft. "They're safe now, Mr. Carter, and that's what matters." As the tension in the room grew in the twins' hospital room, Emily and Olivia remained unaware of their father's presence. They were sitting on the bed, drawing with colored pencils, when Michael timidly entered. "Hello, girls," he said softly. "May I join you?" Olivia watched him warily, but Emily smiled. "Sure, we're drawing our family." Michael moved closer, his heart clenching at the sight. On the paper, Emily and Olivia were holding hands with Sarah, Jessica, and even him. Noah was in Jessica's arms. "That's a beautiful family," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. Olivia looked at him, her eyes filled with a wisdom beyond her years. "Are you going to stay with them? With Jessica and Noah?" The question caught Michael off guard. I'm trying," he admitted. "I'm working on being better, on deserving them, and you too." Emily put down her pencil, looking seriously at Michael. "You can't forget them again, promise?" Michael felt tears spring to his eyes. "I promise, Emily, with all my heart." Back in the meeting room, things with John had escalated. He was standing now, demanding to see his daughters. "You can't stop me," he shouted. "They're my kids." Sarah positioned herself between John and the door. "Mr. Carter, you're not in a state to see the girls right now. Please go home, get sober, and then we can discuss this civilly." John took a menacing step forward, but before he could act, David, the social worker, entered with 2 police officers. "Mr. Carter," David said firmly, "we're going to escort you home now. We have a lot to discuss about your daughter's future, but it won't be today, and it won't be in this condition." As John was led away, Sarah and Jessica exchanged worried looks. "What do we do now?" Jessica asked quietly. Sarah sighed heavily. "We protect the girls at all costs." At that moment, as though summoned by some silent call, Emily and Olivia appeared at the door, Michael right behind them. "Sarah?" Olivia called, her voice trembling slightly. "Can we stay with you forever?" Sarah's heart filled with love and determination. She knelt down, hugging both girls. "If it's up to me, yes, I'll fight for you, I promise." Jessica and Michael watched the scene, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever their own problems, they both had a role in these children's futures. As the group united in a collective hug, the shadow of the twins' father still hung over them. The battle for Emily and Olivia's future was just beginning, and no one knew for sure what tomorrow would bring. But one thing was certain: they would face it together as the unlikely family they had become. The courtroom was tense as Judge Roberts entered. Emily and Olivia, dressed in their best clothes, clung tightly to Sarah's hands, their wide eyes nervously scanning the formal setting. "All rise," announced the bailiff. Judge Roberts took his seat and began. "We are here to determine custody of Emily and Olivia Carter. This is a delicate matter, and I ask everyone to maintain proper decorum." Sarah, seated beside the twins, gave their hands a reassuring squeeze. On the other side of the room, John Carter, the girl's father, looked sober but visibly anxious. Social worker David was the first to present his report. "Your Honor, after extensive investigation, it is my professional opinion that Emily and Olivia Carter would be best placed in the care of Sarah Thompson." David laid out John's history of neglect and alcoholism, in contrast with the loving, stable environment Sarah had provided in recent weeks. When it was Sarah's turn to speak, she stood, her hands trembling slightly. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves, "I love Emily and Olivia like they were my own daughters. Over these past weeks, I've watched them blossom, smile, and trust again. I promise to love them and protect them with everything I have." John Carter was next. He rose slowly, looking fragile. "I know I messed up," he admitted, his voice rough. "I lost my wife and drowned myself in alcohol, but they're my girls. I love them. I can change. I can be better." Judge Roberts listened intently, his face revealing nothing of his thoughts. Then, unexpectedly, Michael stood up. "Your Honor, may I say something?" With the judge's permission, Michael turned to Jessica, tears in his eyes. "Jess, I know I caused unimaginable pain to our family, but these last few weeks have changed me. I'm committed to being a better man, a better father, and part of that is supporting Sarah and these wonderful girls." Jessica looked at Michael, surprised and moved for the first time since the incident. It was then that Emily, the quieter of the twins, stunned everyone. "Judge," she said, her small voice clear, "can we talk?" A murmured ripple of surprise spread through the room. After a moment's consideration, Judge Roberts nodded. "Of course, Emily, you and your sister may approach." Emily and Olivia walked to the front, still holding hands, stopping before the bench. Their faces were solemn, with a maturity that seemed beyond their years. "Judge," Olivia began, "we know you're trying to decide what's best for us." Emily continued, "We love our dad, but he hurt us, not on purpose, but because he was sad and drank a lot." The hush in the courtroom was palpable. John Carter lowered his head, tears streaming down his face. Emily looked directly at the judge. "Sarah makes us feel safe. She loves us and takes care of us like our mom used to. For the first time since our mom died, we're not afraid to sleep at night," Olivia added, her voice thick with emotion. The twins then turned to look at John. "Dad," Emily said softly, "we love you, but you have to get better first. You have to stop drinking." John sobbed openly, nodding through his tears. Olivia faced the judge again. "Please, Your Honor, let us stay with Sarah. She's our family now." The room was utterly silent, many fighting tears of their own. Judge Roberts removed his glasses, discreetly wiping his eyes. "Emily, Olivia," he said gently, "you've shown extraordinary courage and maturity today. Thank you for sharing your feelings with us." The twins nodded solemnly, returning to their seats next to Sarah, who wrapped them in a tight embrace. Judge Roberts looked around the courtroom, his expression thoughtful. "This is one of the most complex cases I've ever presided over," he began. "We have a father who, despite his mistakes, loves his daughters. We have a woman who opened her heart to 2 children in need. And we have 2 incredibly brave young girls who have clearly expressed their wishes. He paused, letting the words settle. Mr. Carter, it's clear you love your children, but love alone isn't always enough. They need stability and safety. Turning to Sarah, he continued, Ms. Thompson, you've demonstrated admirable commitment to these children. Your love for them is evident. Finally, addressing the twins, he said, Emily, Olivia, you've shown a wisdom far beyond your years. Your words carry significant weight in my decision. Judge Roberts took one final pause. Given the complexity of this case, I'm going to take the night to deliberate. I will announce my decision tomorrow morning. With a rap of his gavel, the hearing was adjourned. As people began to file out, Sarah hugged Emily and Olivia. You were so brave, she whispered. Jessica and Michael approached. You were amazing, girls, Jessica said, smiling through tears. Michael knelt in front of the twins. I'm so proud of you, he said softly. No matter what happens, you'll always have a place in our family. Across the room, John Carter watched the scene, his heart breaking but with a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He knew he had a long road ahead, but for the first time in a while, he felt a spark of hope. As the group left the courtroom, the future remained uncertain. But one thing was clear. Emily and Olivia's voices had been heard, and their brave, honest words had touched everyone in the room, potentially altering the course of their lives forever. The next morning, the courtroom was filled with tension. Emily and Olivia, clutching Sarah's hands, could barely contain their anxiety. John Carter sat alone, his eyes red from a sleepless night. Jessica and Michael, united for the first time in weeks, took their seats behind Sarah and the twins. Judge Roberts entered, his face grave yet kind. After careful consideration, he began, and in light of all the testimonies, especially the moving statement from Emily and Olivia, I have reached a decision. The silence in the room was electric. Sarah tightened her hold on the twins' hands, feeling their small bodies tremble. Custody of Emily and Olivia Carter, the judge continued, is hereby awarded to Sarah Thompson. A collective sigh rippled through the room. Sarah embraced the girls, tears of relief and joy streaming down her face. Emily and Olivia sobbed quietly, their little bodies finally relaxing after months of tension. John Carter bowed his head, a mix of sorrow and acceptance on his face. Noticing his reaction, the judge added, However, Mr. Carter will have supervised visitation rights, contingent on his participation in a rehabilitation program for alcoholism. To everyone's surprise, John stood. Your Honor, he said, his voice rough with emotion, I want to thank you, not for the decision, but for giving me a chance to be part of my daughter's lives. He turned to Sarah and the girls. I will get better. For you. I promise. Emily and Olivia looked at their dad, a mix of hope and caution in their eyes. In a gesture of compassion that surprised even herself, Sarah extended her hand to John. We'll work together for the girls' sake, she said quietly. John took Sarah's hand, tears in his eyes. Thank you, he whispered. Judge Roberts watched with approval. It's reassuring to see such maturity and cooperation. Ms. Thompson, Mr. Carter, I trust you'll work together in the best interest of Emily and Olivia. After the hearing, the group gathered in the courthouse hallway. Jessica approached Sarah, hugging her tightly. Congratulations, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You're going to be a wonderful mom. Michael, holding Noah, joined them. Sarah, he said, what you've done for these girls, it's inspiring. It made me realize how much I need to improve as a father and husband. Jessica looked at Michael, surprised by his honesty. She took his hand hesitantly. Maybe we can work on that together. Michael squeezed her hand, hope shining in his eyes. I'd like that, Jess. Sarah observed the moment, a gentle smile on her lips. Turning to the twins, she asked, Well, girls, how about we go home? Emily and Olivia exchanged glances, a mixture of excitement and nervousness on their faces. Home, Olivia repeated, testing the word. That sounds good. Before they could leave, John approached timidly. I just wanted to say goodbye, he said, and promise you that I'll get better. Emily, surprising everyone, hugged her father. We love you, Daddy, she whispered. Olivia joined the hug, and for a moment, the hallway was silent, bearing witness to an emotional reconciliation. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself plunged into the reality of mothering two 6-year-olds. Her once calm and orderly apartment now bustled with laughter, toys, and the occasional argument over who got the last cookie. One night, while tucking the girls into bed, Sarah sat between them, exhausted but content. "How are you both feeling?" she asked softly. Emily smiled, snuggling closer. "Happy," she said simply. "It's nice not to be afraid." Olivia, always protective, looked at Sarah seriously. "You won't send us away, will you? Even if we're naughty sometimes?" Sarah's heart squeezed. She hugged them both tightly. "Never," she promised. "You are my daughters now, forever." Meanwhile, Jessica and Michael were on their own path to healing. Sitting in their living room, Noah sleeping peacefully in the next room, they faced the daunting task of rebuilding their marriage. "I want this to work, Jess," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. Seeing Sarah with the girls, seeing how they trusted her, made me realize how close I came to losing everything. Jessica took his hand, tears in her eyes. "I want it to work too, Michael, but it will take time and effort." Michael nodded, squeezing her hand. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Therapy, fewer hours at work, whatever it takes to be the husband and father you deserve." Across town, John Carter stepped into his first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. His hands trembled slightly as he introduced himself to the group. "My name is John," he said, "and I'm an alcoholic. I'm here because I want to be the father my daughters deserve." As days turned into weeks, a new routine emerged. Sarah balanced her hospital job with single motherhood. Jessica and Michael faithfully attended couples therapy, slowly rebuilding the trust they had lost. John, true to his promise, stayed sober and began having supervised visits with the twins. At first, the meetings were tense and awkward, but slowly, a new dynamic took shape. One sunny Saturday, about a month after the court's decision, all the families gathered in the park for a picnic. It was a scene few would have imagined possible weeks earlier. Sarah spread a blanket under a large tree, while Emily and Olivia ran around with Noah, their laughter echoing in the air. Jessica and Michael arrived hand in hand, carrying a basket of sandwiches and fruit. To everyone's surprise, John also appeared, holding a big, homemade cake. "I hope it's okay that I came," he said hesitantly. Sarah smiled, genuinely glad to see him. "Of course it is, John. You're part of this family now." As they gathered to eat, talk, and laugh, it was clear that something extraordinary had happened. From an almost unimaginable tragedy, a new, expanded family had emerged, united by love and a shared desire to give the children a better future. Emily and Olivia, seated between Sarah and John, seemed to flourish before everyone's eyes. They smiled more often. Their eyes shone with a joy that once seemed impossible. "You know," Jessica said, watching the girls, "I think we've all learned something important from Emily and Olivia." Michael nodded, hugging her. "That sometimes children teach us the most important lessons about love, forgiveness, and courage." Sarah looked around at this makeshift, imperfect family, yet filled with love. "And that family," she said softly, "is not defined by blood, but by love and the commitment to care for one another." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, it was evident that while the road ahead would still have challenges, this new family would face them together. Emily and Olivia had found not just a home, but a support network bigger than they had ever dreamed. And for all the adults present, the twins were a constant reminder of the power of resilience, the courage to start over, and the boundless capacity of the human heart to love and heal. The next morning, the courtroom was filled with tension again. Emily and Olivia, holding onto Sarah's hands, tried to control their nerves. John Carter sat by himself, his eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. Jessica and Michael, together for the first time in weeks, sat behind Sarah and the girls. Judge Roberts entered the room looking stern yet kind. "After careful consideration," he began, "and given all the testimonies, especially the moving account from Emily and Olivia, I have reached a decision." The silence in the room was palpable. Sarah squeezed the twins' hands, feeling their small bodies trembling. "Custody of Emily and Olivia Carter," the judge continued, "will be granted to Sarah Thompson." A collective sigh ran through the room. Sarah embraced the girls, tears of relief and happiness streaming down her face. Emily and Olivia wept quietly, their small bodies finally relaxing after months of uncertainty. John Carter lowered his head, torn between pain and acceptance. Sensing his distress, the judge added, "However, Mr. Carter will have the right to supervised visitation on condition that he enters a rehabilitation program for alcoholism." To everyone's surprise, John stood. "Your Honor," he said, his voice thick with emotion, I want to thank you, not for the ruling, but for giving me a chance to be part of my daughter's lives." He turned to Sarah and the girls. "I will get better. For you. I promise." Emily and Olivia gazed at their father, a mix of hope and caution in their eyes. In a gesture of compassion that surprised her, Sarah reached out and took John's hand. "We'll work together for the girls' sake," she said gently. John accepted Sarah's hand, tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. Judge Roberts observed the scene approvingly. "It's heartening to see such maturity and cooperation. Miss Thompson, Mr. Carter, I trust you will work together for Emily and Olivia's best interests." After the hearing, everyone gathered in the courthouse hallway. Jessica approached Sarah, enveloping her in a tight hug. "Congratulations," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "You're going to be an amazing mother." Michael, holding Noah, joined them. "Sarah," he said, "what you've done for these girls is inspiring. It made me realize just how much I need to improve as a father and a husband." Jessica turned to Michael, surprised by his candor. She timidly took his hand. Maybe we can work on that together." Michael squeezed her hand, hope shining in his eyes. "I'd really like that, Jess." Sarah watched them, a soft smile on her face. She turned to the twins. "Well, girls, what do you say we head home?" Emily and Olivia exchanged a look, part excitement, part nerves. "Home," Olivia echoed. "That sounds good." Before they could leave, John cautiously approached. I wanted to say goodbye," he said, "and promise you I'll get better." Emily, surprising everyone, hugged her father. "We love you, Dad," she whispered. Olivia joined the hug, and for a moment the hallway fell silent, witnessing an emotional reunion. In the days that followed, Sarah plunged into the reality of raising two 6-year-olds. Her once orderly apartment was now bursting with laughter, toys, and the occasional dispute over the last cookie. One night, as she tucked the girls into bed, Sarah sat between them, tired but happy. "How are you feeling?" she asked softly. Emily smiled, leaning closer. "Happy," she said simply. "It feels good not to be scared anymore." Olivia, always the guardian, looked at Sarah seriously. "You won't send us away, right, even if we misbehave?" Sarah's heart clenched. She pulled both of them into a hug. "Never," she promised. "You are my daughters now, always." Meanwhile, Jessica and Michael were on their own path toward healing. Sitting in their living room with Noah peacefully sleeping in the next room, they confronted the challenge of rebuilding their marriage. "I want this to work, Jess," Michael said, his voice laden with emotion. "Seeing Sarah with the girls, seeing how they trusted her, made me realize just how close I came to losing everything." Jessica took his hand, tears in her eyes. "I want it too, Michael, but it's going to take time and effort." Michael nodded, gripping her hand. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes, therapy, fewer work hours, anything to be the husband and father you both deserve." In another part of town, John Carter arrived at his first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. His hand shook slightly as he introduced himself. "My name is John," he said, "and I'm an alcoholic. I'm here because I want to be the father my daughters deserve." As the days turned into weeks, a new routine began to take shape. Sarah learned to juggle her hospital job with the demands of being a single parent. Jessica and Michael attended couples therapy diligently, gradually rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. John, keeping his promise, stayed sober and began having supervised visits with the twins. Initially awkward and tense, the meetings slowly blossomed into a new, healthier dynamic. On a bright Saturday, about a month after the judge's ruling, everyone gathered at the park for a picnic. It was a scene no one would have anticipated just weeks earlier. Sarah laid a blanket under a sprawling tree, while Emily and Olivia played with Noah, their laughter echoing through the air. Jessica and Michael arrived hand in hand, carrying a basket packed with sandwiches and fruit. To everyone's surprise, John showed up too, holding a large homemade cake. "I hope it's okay that I'm here," he said timidly. Sarah smiled, genuinely pleased to see him. "Of course it is, John. You're part of this family now." As the group settled down to eat, chat, and laugh, it was clear that something remarkable had occurred. Out of an almost unimaginable crisis, A new, extended family had formed, united by love and a shared commitment to giving the children a brighter future. Emily and Olivia, seated between Sarah and John, seemed to bloom before everyone's eyes. Their smiles came more readily. Their eyes sparkled with a joy that had once seemed impossible. "You know," Jessica said, watching the girls, "I think we all learned something profound from Emily and Olivia." Michael nodded, drawing Jessica close. "That sometimes it's the children who teach us the most important lessons about love, forgiveness, and bravery." Sarah glanced around at this spontaneous, imperfect family brimming with love. "And that family," she said quietly, "is defined not by blood, but by love and the willingness to care for each other." As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow over the park, it was evident that although challenges still lay ahead, this new family would face them side by side. Emily and Olivia had found not just a home, but a vast circle of love and support they never imagined possible. And for every adult present, the twins served as a constant reminder of the power of resilience, the courage to begin anew, and the boundless capacity of the human heart to love and to heal.